The scripture today is taken from the writings of Amos, the prophet of the Old Testament, when he says, "Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." Words for his day, hundreds of years ago. Words for our day, even here, even now. Amen. You know, I've got so much to say and so little time to say it. And I just don't get it, that all this caring about one another and talking about one another and supporting one another and celebrating each other's birth and being this community of love just gets in the way of something much, much less important. As a matter of fact, all that has gone on today, including this wonderful moment with Tiffany, has forced me to almost set aside a good portion of everything I was going to say. And sometimes that's good, because it is situations that create opportunity for response and give rise to creativity when once something that was so prepared, so ready, can wait. So I'm going to give you a bit of a synopsis of what I was going to say, and here are my notes, so those aren't going to count. First, let me address the title of today's talk, because it's a pretty powerful title. Disdain, cruelty, and the loss of meaning. Now, to view another person with disdain is to view that person with a feeling of contempt, while at the same moment viewing that person as being unworthy or inferior. That's what disdain is. To view another person with contempt as a person who is unworthy or inferior to you. Cruelty is to willfully inflict pain or suffering on another person, while viewing the other person as being undeserving of respect or kindness. It is the willful infliction of pain and suffering on another person because you see the other person as undeserving of respect or kindness. And when a person or a culture approaches others with attitudes of disdain and behaviors of cruelty, then one, from an existentialist or from a psychological point of view, can say one is viewing a person or a culture that has experienced a loss of meaning. Now, those persons will argue with you and say, no, there's meaning in what I'm doing because I am literally acting out behaviors that are just and right. I do not show respect and caring for people because they don't deserve that respect and caring, and that is what justice is all about. They get what they deserve. For example, if someone is entering the United States in ways I consider illegal, then they don't deserve justice because they're doing something I consider unjust. It does not matter why they are entering the situation, why they're entering the country. It does not matter what the situation is that characterizes their lives. I have a right, under the laws of my concept of justice, to say no to them, to punish them, to take children from them, to imprison them, to treat them as they deserve to be treated, which is to be treated as being undeserving of my respect or my kindness, which is to treat them for what they are, unworthy persons who are inferior to me. And that becomes a kind of consciousness of what constitutes justice. They've done something I consider illegal. The appropriate response is their punishment, even if that punishment is cruel. Those who say that's not justice, I'm not even sure it's legal, but even if it's legal, it's not justice. Not in the sense that we think of justice. Not in the sense of an ideal that says every person is precious and unique. Every person deserves to be seen for their humanness. Every person deserves to be regarded with respect. Every person deserves to be the recipient of our care, and every person deserves to expect us to be a beneficial, not a detrimental presence in their life. That is what justice is. This is not a new problem. It was one that confronted Jesus all the time. What do the rules call for? And do the rules constitute justice? The rules say that on Shabbat we do not do any work. That's the rule. To break that rule is to be in the wrong and to be deserving of punishment because you're in the wrong. A man enters the synagogue where Jesus is with the Pharisees. It's the Shabbat, it's Sabbath. He has a withered hand and wants healing. Jesus, in compassion, responds to him and heals the hand. Everyone who sees his act of compassion sees it as an act of injustice. He broke the rule. It is Shabbat. You're not supposed to do work on Shabbat. He did the work. The fact that the man was healed by his work matters not. Now the question is, who has lost meaning in that scene? The one who doesn't understand the rules? The one who breaks the rules? The one who offers the healing in spite of the rules? Or the one who says, no, the rules are what count? It's illegal for you to do what you did. And you deserve to be punished. And so they go out and plot how to kill Jesus. Because Jesus is a troublemaker. He breaks the rules. And he breaks the rules in the name of compassion. Sort of like this church. This morning. Now darn it, the rules are I get 20 minutes. But no, you have to love one another. You have to celebrate one another. You have to sing happy birthday so that someone else's life is enhanced. No, you have to care about the earth and talk about that. No, you have to listen to one another's joys and concerns, and you have to be responsive, and you have to help one another out, even if it's they who incidentally may have a good idea about suppression of votes, because that was my civil rights work in Texas. They had more things than that to keep people from voting.
I'm not done with it.
So here's the church. Now you're breaking the rules, church. And now you're making me respond to this loving situation on the Sabbath. And yet, that's what meaningful life is about. Responding to situations as they come to us in life. And those who have a meaningful sense of life are able to be responsive and no longer repress what their own inner self calls them to be because some rule says you can't do that. One of the great influences on my life has been Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and neurologist who was in Auschwitz and other death camps during the Nazi regimes. And he used to say, we can't control the circumstances that confront us. Now here's a man who stood naked in front of his German guards at Auschwitz, stripped of everything, having everything taken from him, with them acting with disdain and cruelty. And he said, in that moment I realized that the one thing they couldn't take from me was my sense of meaning. The one thing they couldn't take from me was my sense of who I am as a person. The one thing they couldn't take from me is my sense of my own value as a human. And in that moment, something transformative took place. In that moment, I no longer hated the guards who had tortured me. In that moment, I had compassion because I was viewing people who had lost meaning in their life. I had compassion for them. Now that's the challenge before us. And I want you to hear how difficult it is to stand up as a church against cruelty and disdaining attitudes toward others, with a sense of the meaning that impels us, valuing others as precious, unique individuals deserving of love, while we have compassion, not hatred, toward those who are acting out the cruelty. Now that's a challenge. That's your challenge. Do we become hateful against the hateful? Do we become violent against the violent? Do we become cruel against the cruel? Is that what we're called to be? I can be as violent as you can be. I can be as disdaining as you can be. This is a fight for some of us. It's hard to watch the news today and not adopt some of the same attitudes toward the people we see as disdaining and cruel as we get in touch with our feelings toward them. But the consciousness of the community of love, which we claim to be, has to be a consciousness that sees every individual, including the cruel ones and the disdaining ones, as precious, unique individuals deserving of love. Love is a gift. It's not earned. That's why we speak of forgiveness. Give. It's a gift. I don't know how many times in therapy I've heard people say to me, I just can't forgive that person, they don't deserve it. Deserving has nothing to do with it. Forgiveness has nothing at all to do with the other person. Forgiveness has to do with your capacity for graciousness. And so forgiveness has to do with compassion. That in spite of who this other is, they do not have the power to transform me into being one such as they. In spite of what they've done, they do not have the power to transform me into being one just as cruel toward them. That I will stay true to the idea that we are called to love one another I will stay true to the call that we are to see one another as precious. I will stay true to the perspective that says everyone is deserving of love and life and caring and respect. Even those who stand against all those qualities. And I will have compassion for them because in their disdaining attitudes and in their cruel behaviors, they have lost the real meaning of life itself. And if millions of other people support them in what they're doing, millions support them in what they're doing, I have to remember that just because millions of people say it is right does not make it so. I'm old enough to have lived through World War II. I didn't know much about it, I was pretty young. But I lived through it and saw the aftermath of it. Millions of people thought that the cruelty of the SS was all right. I know a friend whose mother grew up in Germany at that time. And I had a talk with her once about Hitler. And she said, well, Hitler did some bad things, but the trains ran on time. Somehow the conveniences that accrued to her were enough to say it was all right. And in that moment I had compassion for her. I didn't go into some big discussion about the history of World War II and Nazism and all that it did. I just listened to her and heard how she had justified in her mind that the trains ran on time. It was a more efficient country. Now, I don't know what's happening to our neighbors today. I don't know what some people have in their heads. I don't know what some people's attitudes towards what's going on in our own culture are today. I hear what the news people say, depending on which channel I listen to, and I do listen to the different channels on purpose. But I know this, that we know who we are. And as Viktor Frankl once said, we can't control the circumstances out there, but we can always control how we respond to the circumstances. And what we are called to do is to respond to those circumstances with love. To respond to those circumstances, as Amos would say, fighting to let justice flow down like waters and righteousness like a flowing stream. That's what we're called to do. So we will stand up for justice, and we will stand up for meaning, and we will stand up for life. And when we do that, we can call ourselves faithful, and when we don't do that, we call ourselves unfaithful. So remember, we will see those who live out a life of disdaining attitude. We will see those who live out a life of cruelty toward others. We will see those who live out a life that seems to have set meaningfulness and purpose aside. But we are that community that should know its meaning and its purpose, the meaning and purpose of life itself. To live life in love. To share life with graciousness. To see those in need with compassion and to respond. If we can do that, then we stay true to who we say we are. If we don't do that, whatever we say we are doesn't matter.